Brooklyn Book Doctor. Hello, happy June. I am really excited here to invite you to listen to me talk to Peter Hoffman, who is a chef here in New York City, whose book, What's Good? A Memoir in 14 Ingredients, just came out from Abrams last week on June 8th. He is here. Here we go. And we are going to talk about how he found his book idea. So, Peter, the join button is down at the bottom. Should be around where the comment bar is. And just let me know if you have any trouble. I am actually looking for the, okay, yes. No? He is here. Hi.
Hey, Joelle.
Hi, how's it going?
Pretty good.
Excellent. Welcome to Brooklyn Book Doctor on Instagram.
Yay. Let me get my phone settled. Yeah.
Yep. And
good.
hey, everyone who's coming
Dan
on.
Rothman and running pastry chef Lisa Fernandez and Dan.
And
so great.
Will and Pam, maybe both.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah, let's see. Oh, yep, I see that. Cool.
So you know what? I was just pulling up, hey, Olivia. I was just pulling up What's Good online to take a look at the beautiful cover. And I noticed that on Amazon, it says both a memoir in 14 ingredients and a memoir in 12 ingredients.
No way.
Yes.
It never was 12.
It was never 12. Where did you get 12 from?
It was never 12. I don't know where they got that. Somebody wrote that. Oh, my God. Okay.
So I see
correct.
both. Yes, I see both. So one place is correct, one place it's not correct.
Uh-huh.
This is the joy of Amazon.
Yes, I will put my people there at Abrams onto that Amazon correction.
Well, welcome, and I'm really excited to talk to you. And you've got a lot of followers here. So welcome,
Parker
everyone.
And Olivia and my sister Judy and
hey, Judy.
And Theo. Lots of good folks.
Hey, Theo. Theo, I told my friend about meeting Ben Bliss, your friend Ben Bliss, and he couldn't believe it. He was like, "Oh, no way, you did not meet Ben Bliss." So thanks for bringing him to Peter's podcast recording. Recording last week. And
nice.
Cool. Welcome, everybody.
I always forget Chef S. Is that Jody or is that my former pastry chef whose name I'm spacing at the moment? But I always get you mixed up with the other one.
Reveal yourself.
Anyway, I know. Whatever. So happy you're here. And Jill Drury, my cousin. Wonderful.
Hey, Jill.
Yeah, so great.
Well,
Joelle, you were on the call last night with Adam, right?
I was there. Yes, I was. Yep.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, it's great to see you. So just for people who are joining, you might know Peter already. For people who don't know him, I will tell you what my connection is that Peter and I know each other from yoga, which is the great leveler.
For sure. For stiff old guys like me.
I mean, everyone comes up against their limitations in yoga. Yeah. And we've been doing yoga together for many, many years. And then a couple of years ago, we both participated in the same writing group, actually at different times, and now we're in it together at the same time, which is really wonderful. So I have had the pleasure of reading Peter's book in various stages. But I have to say, Peter, that I actually never knew that it was a memoir in 14 ingredients until I think like a week before the book came out.
Right. You thought it was in 12 ingredients.
It wasn't me.
Yeah, I guess, in a certain way, we never really spoke about what the structure of the book was in its entirety, and the title was, I know I had some conversations with Pam, another member of the group, about titles and suffering through that whole process. But yeah, I guess we never really, we dove right into the work rather than talking about what's the book structure and things like that.
Right, which totally makes sense. And it just goes to show that when you're writing a book or when you're working on it really closely, you're not necessarily seeing the entire picture at all. And I just had to laugh because I was like, how did I get this far along in Peter's journey and actually not know this very fundamental thing about it? But then for people who don't know you at all, I just want to give a really brief introduction, and it's going
Sure.
to be very brief. And so I'm just going to read a little bit offline because since I know you from a personal context, from a yoga context, I don't actually know all of the many things that you've done. But anyway, the most important thing to know is that you have owned a few very well-loved restaurants in New York that go back to 1990. And you were on the front end of the locavore movement before it really had a title, the locavore movement, like farm to table, way before that. And that your passion is not just running a restaurant in New York City, but it's the entire experience of the food. Where does it come from? How is it related to the people and the land that grow it, as well as the people and the place where it becomes a meal and then it's consumed. And you bring in literature, and you bring in music, and you bring in other cultures. So really, running a restaurant is not just about serving people food. It's a whole. It's a whole. It's an entire experience. And people who had the pleasure of eating at your restaurants know this very well. So, and now your restaurants are, you no longer run restaurants at the moment. You're on sabbatical, is what Adam Gopnik, who wrote your foreword, was saying last night. And you've written this book.
Yeah.
So for someone who came from a world, I loved how Adam was talking about it like theater. You and Adam were talking about like theater, like you prepare for the show to begin and you get ready for the show to begin.
Right. Well, I was saying that my first cooking job, that's what I realized was what I loved about the restaurant business. I wasn't even a cook yet. I was a muscle cleaner and a dishwasher and put away deliveries and things like that. But the entirety of the community experience, and as I said, that the curtain goes up at 6 o'clock when the dining room is open, and then the drive of energy through that, and the climax at 8:30 when everybody's seated in the dining room, and then it falls off, and that whole energy was really theatrical, and I loved it. It just gave me a lot of energy. And then I started to figure out, okay, what's the food and what do I want to cook and what kind of culture do I want to be in? But that exists in restaurants all over, of all different kinds, whether it's a diner, on the corner, they have their morning rush for breakfast, or, in the afternoon, or a fine dining restaurant. That doesn't change. It's still that theater.
That makes a lot of sense, and that makes it sound really exciting and very different from writing a book.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
So,
as you know, I did a lot of writing during the pandemic, just here at my desk all by myself.
Yes, which is almost the opposite of being in a busy, bustling environment where there's a rise, a crescendo, and then a decrescendo and a conclusion. I mean, a book ultimately will have that experience. Readers will have that experience reading the book. But for you, so I want to know a couple of things. So for you, what the experience was like writing the book, but also before we get there, really as someone who's coming from a world that doesn't have to necessarily do with writing, how did you come up with the idea of, okay, it's going to be a memoir. It's not going to be a cookbook. It's going to be a memoir. And I'm going to organize it around 14 ingredients. And I want to write a book. And, so you come to, I want to write a book. And then how do you take your vast experiences and condense them into, this is the book?
Great question, Joelle. Big question.
Big question.
A lot of time is involved in giving, I mean, the span of time that took me to figure out all that stuff out, but I'll condense some of it. But, running a restaurant and being in the dining room, countless editors and book agents would come in and they go, "Have you done a book? Are you going to do a cookbook?" and all of that. And I'm like, "Yeah, no, not really. The world has enough cookbooks. The world really does have enough cookbooks."
Is that possible?
I guess not. And people, I said this the other night when I was talking to Slow Food NYC community, and many people piped in, "Oh no, we want your book. We need another. There's never enough cookbooks." It's like, okay, great. So I'll think about it. But I always felt, because in fact, my cuisine that we served at Savoy and at Back 40, a lot of that material came out of books. I mean, we had to adapt the recipes so that they worked for our palate or they worked for our operation. And of course, there was some personal creativity involved in that. I don't want to say that there wasn't, but we started by getting that material from books. So why would anybody want my recipes? They came from, Claudia Roden, or they came from Judy Rogers, all these wonderful cookbook writers. What have I got to add to the situation? But what I have to add to the situation is my approach, my philosophy, my thinking. So that spoke to, don't write a cookbook, write a narrative book. I started, there were a couple of early proposals, or, sketches. They never made it into full proposal form. But I wanted to write a book that was not memoir at all, that was just about ingredients. And I was talking to somebody about that, an agent, and she was like, "No, they want the dirt. They want to know about Chef World."
Yeah.
And I struggled with that a little bit, because I was like, that's not what I want to write about. I don't want to necessarily talk about the past or about the operation. I wanted to talk about my point of inspiration, the vegetables, the ingredients that I get at the market, and stories that I've learned from farmers or fishermen and things like that. So, okay. So then I was like, okay, I'm writing a memoir. And I sort of made that decision right before I closed Back 40 West, the last restaurant that I had. And I was like, well, I better get a deal in place before it becomes public that I'm closing the restaurant, because I'm a more valuable commodity when I'm still running a restaurant, from marketing purposes or whatever. And I sort of was right about that. In fact, numerous editors rejected the book proposal once it was finally written, because they basically said, I don't have a platform anymore.
The kind
Yeah.
world of publishing.
Yeah, right. It's like, if they thought that the only way that the book was going to get sold was by sitting at the host stand at the entry of the restaurant, it was like, well, that isn't what I really had in mind. So it's like, okay, move over, you. I'm not interested in you, and you're not interested in me. Anyway, what I started to realize, that I had all these kind of early tables of contents written and sketches, and I started to see that there really were ingredient chapters, and then there were life story chapters, and then something really interesting happened. Is that I read a book called Lab Girl.
Oh, I read that book.
Yeah, by Hope Jahren.
So great.
And well, I'm glad that you think it's great too.
I loved it.
It completely knocked me on the head and said, this is the structure. Because what she was doing, or what she's doing in that book, is she's a botanist and a professor at university. And so she's telling you what her professional path is, how she went to college, why she was interested in botany, what it was like to be in graduate school, how you get a grant and suffer through running a lab, and and that's the mechanics of being a scientist. And then on the other side, she said, but why am I doing this? It's because I love plants and I'm inspired by, and so she's writing, the reader gets to be brought into the wonder and the magic that she feels about photosynthesis and evolution of plants. And I was like, that's it. I got it. That's what the book is. My book is going to be alternating chapters. She doesn't stick completely to it, but it kind of is in this alternating way. Chapters about the mechanics of being a scientist and the glory, the beauty. And so that's what I settled into. So that's the point at which I said, okay, I've got these ingredient chapters and I've got the memoir chapters. And the ingredient chapters are not just a loose collection of things I like to cook and eat, but in fact they're going to reflect a year in the Greenmarket, starting from the very beginning of the season when it's dead winter, and the only things that are there are what's in storage in the root cellar, to the beginnings of spring and regrowth and the waking up of our ecosystem of the planet, that spring is coming and things are starting to grow again. And isn't it amazing sort of what we get as food in the early spring, and then moving on to fruiting bodies and till the end of the season when the frost comes and starts to kind of wipe out some of the plants that have grown. So that's what I did. Is I said, there's the year in the Greenmarket, alternating with my life, how I got interested in cooking and matured as a cook and ran a restaurant, and then kind of wound that down.
So there's a lot of inspiration in your story. And I want to just point out for people who are watching because they're interested in writing or in books, that your idea really started to coalesce once you found the structure. That was part of your process. So first you had inspiration of your ingredients. You were inspired by the subject that you're an expert in. And then you were inspired by Lab Girl, the memoir by Hope. How do you say it, Jahren?
Jahren,
Hope Jahren, which is a great memoir. And then the other element that helped you organize it was really time and the seasons that the market goes through. And so in finding these containers and inspirations and examples helped you to organize your book, helped you to think about what your book is and articulate what your book is. So in a way, the two things were not really, they're not separate at all. Your structure and your book idea went together.
Right. It's true. And, one of the earlier structures that I had, it was also kind of seasonally based, but it was more of a cookbook, and in that I was going to, it was over a seasonal timeline, but I was going to have, each chapter was going to be at a certain point in the season and was going to have narrative, expository writing, and then a set of sort of simple dishes to do at home, and then grand banquet type dishes, because I've done a lot of those kinds of grand dishes, like what I talked about with Adam yesterday, of doing cassoulet and choucroute and pozole that I would do in the restaurant, so that these sort of the joy of these community dishes where you're eating out of a single pot or out of a single large platter of complex material. Those sort of were anchors of a structure at one point. And so, but that seemed, I don't know, it was maybe that's the second book, but it was a little overwhelming to me to think about trying to get that all done. So that kind of went into quiescence.
Yes, and a little earlier when you were talking, and I didn't want to interrupt you, Black Label Donuts said, Ruth Reichel has nothing on this guy. Just kidding, Ruth. Did you hear that?
Yeah. I saw that earlier. Yeah. And I met Rich the other day. He was down at a signing that I did in the Seaport, and I see that Mariano he here with us, and Mariano is in the book. He was our last and best butcher, and an anchor to the restaurants, a total anchor. And not only did he do his work well, but he was always looking out what other people were doing and caring for the restaurant. And he wasn't their supervisor, but he would either tell me or tell somebody else that other people weren't doing what they should be doing, because he had eyes, and he was invested in making sure that our place, my place, but he had that kind of feeling of ownership in it. Mattered. Yeah. So,
Yeah. Awesome.
Thanks,
Welcome, Mariano. Yes. Well, as you were talking about the other not book, the book you didn't do, cookbook, which may or may not happen, we don't know. I was thinking, since your whole thing is like the interconnectedness of us, our food, our cultures, and the Greenmarket in New York City and Union Square is really a place where things are interwoven and intertwined. And of course, since I work in books all the time, and I was thinking, oh, you could do this and you could do that, and what about this? The thing that came to mind for me was a cookbook where you also talked about your relationship with the cook whose recipe you adapted for the restaurant. That showed the lineage of the development of the thing that we're about to cook, or something like that. But anyway, let's talk about the book that you have right now.
Sure.
And Rich says, did I get the job of PR agent yet?
You're doing wonderfully, Rich, doing the shout outs for me. Thank you so much. He actually, Rich pointed out to me about a line at the end of the chapter about the dinner series. And it was a sentence that I loved, but I had sort of forgotten about. And he reminded me of it. And that's what I closed the why talk last night with, was reading that little bit about restaurants. And we go to some restaurants because the menu never changes. And then we go to some restaurants because we are changed by the menu. And
Rich is on it.
Yeah, he is. He's posting the whole thing again. Yeah, you're great, man. But I love, it's kind of wonderful to get the feedback from people who are reading the book and what their experience of it is, and what's resonating for people. Because, first of all, like that chapter, I don't know when I finished that chapter. I probably could look it up, but I finished it early in the pandemic. So I finished it a year ago. I haven't really read it again. I read it for proofing in the summer, comments back from Jameson, my editor, but I didn't kind of like sit with the ideas. And so that when people pick up on it and I go, yeah, I had a beautiful nugget there. It's true. And so it's very gratifying to hear what people are responding to and what's resonating for them.
The book has a life of its own, beyond your experience, beyond your writing, beyond what you put together. And so now you get to see how it lands with people.
Right.
I think that might be one of the most exciting things about being an author, is not just coming up with the idea, which is always a really exciting part when you've got it, when you know what it is, but it's seeing how that idea affects other people that you really have no control over. Like, here it is, here's my offering, and now it's in your hands.
Right. Exactly. And sometimes, I experience that as a restaurant owner, right? People come in and whether it's about critics and how they write up the restaurant and what they liked and what they didn't like and their quibbles, or just customers and how you listen to how people are experiencing your meal or your dining experience. But this is kind of different, because it's, that kind of critique of a restaurant and a menu and all of that. That's it's very tactile, and it's changeable. You can change the menu. If everybody says, I hated that dish, you take it off the menu. This is out there now. I birthed it. I did it. I had my chance to go through again. It was part of what I did in the summer was to go, you're going public with this. That's what publishing means. Are you good with this? Are you satisfied with this is your comment on this topic? And so you're signing off. And so that was great. And now it's out there and people can do with it what they will.
So looking at your book as it is now, I mean, you're in the throes of talking to people about it. You're doing public events, media events, you're doing book signings and that kind of thing. Does it seem different to you now that it's in hardback form, printed, it's in other people's hands than it did as you were writing it?
Well, the package is really beautiful.
It is.
And so I love looking at it. I feel, again, grateful to the people at Abrams, Deb in particular, the book cover designer or the book package designer, and Quentin Bacon, who took the photograph. Those people really took on what I was trying to express and made a beautiful, beautiful package. So if you come across it sitting in a bookstore, you go, oh my goodness, what's that? And and it's not just one more chef standing in the Greenmarket holding a bunch of radishes for which, umpteen books have been photographed and looked that way. And you go, ho hum, I don't need that story. Because that's not my story. My story, as you talked about, is about this whole interconnectedness that's going on between me and ingredients and farmers and customers and the planet and the spinning of the earth and the seasons and all that stuff. So this package, this photograph with the little dragonfly sitting on top of the apples is my favorite part in a certain way, because again, it's like, this isn't just food. This isn't a photograph about consumption. It's about the universe. That dragonfly has nothing to do with food, except that, of course, it has everything to do with food because it's out there, flying in the meadow. And so I love where we ended up with that. It wasn't easy to get there, but we got there.
Yes, and worth pursuing.
Yes, absolutely.
So in a lot of ways, your book, well, in some ways, because your book is many things, but in some ways, your book ended up being the anti-kitchen confidential.
Mm-hmm.
Which is the one that the agents and editors, when they would come into your restaurant, were asking you for. They're like, we want the nitty gritty, we want the dirt, we want the behind the scenes, we want another Anthony Bourdain blowout. Like, we want like, tell us what it's really like. And for people who haven't read the book or don't know your paths crossed with Anthony Bourdain, both when you were a teenager and in adulthood, and you were really moving in different ways through the food world and with different perspectives. So it seems fitting that you followed what was really calling you and waited for the moment that felt like, okay, this is the book, rather than going with what the industry was asking you for.
Yeah, very true, Joelle. I mean, I remember sitting in the meeting with that agent who I ultimately stopped working with, and I was really uncomfortable. This isn't me. This isn't going to be the book that I want to write. And so as a first-time writer, I'm sitting there like, yeah, but I want somebody to buy my product. I want them, and so that you have to be willing to be part of this give and take. They know the business, but and what sells, But it's like, I'm not writing that book. I'm not writing that book. The interesting thing about me and Tony is that we were both really, I mean, this is in the book and you discover it in reading it, but we were both who we were at age 16, and both wonderful, and I at least appreciated who he was in that time. Not sure if we hung. He appreciated who I was, but we were both really interesting people and interesting writers. That's what we were in, was an English lit class that was both text analysis, reading mostly plays that summer, and doing creative writing. So it's kind of amazing that with four people in a summer school class, two of them both turn out to be chefs or food people, and then have their paths circle back around. You know, we did diverge. I don't like a lot of how he, particularly in his early years, he romanticized some of the abusive parts, whether that's personal substance abuse or abuse of other people, the sexuality, the broy romanticization of life in the kitchen. I didn't really like that part of what he was writing about, and I felt that I was coming from a very different culture, and I was in restaurants that were of a very different culture. But ultimately, I think that we kind of found some common ground. He evolved some of his desires to always be a taboo breaker, and shocking was that then he got into the idea of eating nose to tail. And I got into eating nose to tail because I wanted to buy from local farmers, and I had to buy the whole animal. And then we were like, okay, we have to learn how to use all these parts, and let's go back and look at the historical recipes that traditional cuisines have, because they too had to be economical and use the entire animal. They weren't able to, just dial up on the phone and get a box of filet mignons shipped in. They were like, this is the animal. We took its life. We have to live off of every aspect of it. So we kind of came together in that way of saying, like, yeah, nose to tail. Let's eat, fried pigtail salad. So as I said, in the beginning, for some that had shock value, but it also had kind of sustainability and complete economic efficiency value to it too. And so we found that common ground. And then he started to think about people in the food system, in the food production system, and see where there was exploitation and abuse, and started speaking out about that, and as well as celebrating non-haute cuisine foods of the world. So those two things, I really had a lot of respect for him in coming around to. I wish that we had been able to sit at the table and talk about how we found our way back to each other, or to those shared values, since there was a period where we weren't sharing values. But sadly, he's not with us anymore.
Yeah, thanks for saying that. Rich is busting me. He's like, you're getting really serious, dropping these bombs. I wasn't meaning to put you on the spot, but that was actually really super interesting. And one thing that I want to just highlight, so again, the book end of it, is that just what you said, that you were under some pressure from the industry to do a certain kind of book. And you had interest in representation. There was a marketing avenue for that kind of book. And of course, we all feel like when someone invites you to submit a proposal, or someone invites you to write a book, that's a very seductive offer. And what you had to do was really check in and really check, like, is this the book that I want to write? Is this the representation of my ideas that I want to put out there? And you made that choice, which in the moment might have been a little tricky, of fighting with yourself. I don't know if that happened, but I'm just saying, I know it happens for clients that I work with. Sure. There is that desire to, like, oh my gosh, someone wants to represent my ideas. Of course I want to do that. I'm going to listen to what they want me to do, and I'm going to try to do that for them. But there is a line that if we cross it, we actually can end up creating something that we're not happy with, because it doesn't represent our point of view or our values. And so there is this dance going on, both the dance of the inspiration and the expert knowledge that you have, and the market, that's always very real, and the dance of someone wants to represent me. Someone wants to put my book out. So I want to do whatever they need to make that happen, versus actually the thing I want to do is not the thing they want me to do. So I have to make a choice here. And I think that's what you articulated very nicely. And it's really about staying in touch with your idea and making sure that the book that you create is the book that represents that idea as well as it possibly can be, allowing for things like what you might not know in the market, but not letting it go to the point of writing a book that you don't want to write.
Right. You know, and since I know that you as Brooklyn Book Doctor are thinking about the business and of this process of getting a book together all the time, I'll also share with you that choosing an agent was really a very crucial part of all of this. Not being a writer, right? I mean, maybe some of the people that you work with or your experience, you've been around the publishing world a lot because of the different kinds of projects that you do. I had no idea what agents really do and what the different personalities bring, and therefore what set of values was I interested in, what did I want to get out of an agent and all of that. So I did a lot of dating. Some of them were just first dates, coffee and at truly.
And this is metaphorical, people who are listening. This is metaphorical
right.
dating.
Mikey Larhoven is on the call. You have to meet people and go, are we gonna jive? Are we gonna have a good conversation here? Are they gonna help me? Are they gonna support me to produce the book that I want to have? And so I had that experience. I checked out a lot of different people. I got a sense of different approaches to it, and then settled in with somebody, and then spent a year, and it wasn't good. It wasn't good for me. And that's what we were kind of talking about, which I felt like she kept wanting me to write a book that was about the dirt, and I didn't want to write a book that's about dirt. And so I said, I gotta move on. And then I found somebody who is David McCormick at David McCormick Literary Agency, and he really understood what my sensibility was about, and said, there's a place for this in the world, and I'm going to help you find a place for your sensibility. It has
Wonderful.
value. It has value. So
wonderful. Yeah. Yes, I want to emphasize for people that is so important, that alliance. For someone who understands your vision, who wants to go to bat for you, who supports what you're about, it's really key to your happiness and your book's success, in fact.
Yeah, very true. Very true.
I want to just say congratulations again on this beautiful book.
Thank you, Joelle.
It really is beautiful. I can't wait to get my copy. I don't have a copy yet, but tonight I think I'm going to get one.
Yeah, great. And I want to say, both about, you started by that. We know each other from yoga class, but then we sort of evolved into this writing group. First of all, I did a lot of procrastinating about the writing. And,
that'll be comforting to a lot of people.
Right, a lot of procrastinating. I mean, there's all these people who tell you, you got to, first thing, you get up in the morning and with your cup of coffee, you start writing, and then you do all this other stuff the rest of the day. Those are your best hours. And I don't want to say that that's not true. But I am sort of more like the dog who has to go in ever tighter spiral circles to get to the rug where you know that the dog is going to lie down and take a nap, kind of thing. And I had to do other things first, and read my emails and read the paper and see what the crazy president was doing, and all that stuff, until I could clear that out and say, okay, now I'm going to think about the book. But having deadlines of producing a chapter, bringing new material once a month to our writing group was a really powerful, important deadline for me to work with. I have to produce by Thursday, a week from Thursday. Had to, can't show without. And And so that was a great driver. That's one thing about the writing group. The other thing is that I loved what everybody reflected back to me and offered, and in particular your insight. I mean, I felt like, we had known each other for probably 10 years as yoga mates, and but really not very long in the writing group. And you really always pointed me towards the core emotional material that was either well expressed or that you
Not so well expressed.
Yeah, well, no, I don't mean that, but what I mean is you pointed me towards the place to go deeper, to say, I see that's where the juicy material is, and you could go further with it. And that was really important, and made a better book.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Joelle.
Thank you. Yeah, well, it's been so much fun to be with you on this journey, and it's so fun to get to know you in this different way. Yeah. What a privilege. And writing group just seems like stakes are low. I know I'm going to go and like what's happening there and like what I'm reading, and we'll have a good conversation, and versus, I have to meet this deadline for my publisher. So
right.
The beauty of a writing group where it's a trusted venue with your peers, hopefully this is what it is, where you come out thinking, oh, okay, all right, I know my next steps. What I'm going to do.
And, and the writing group, both prior to you getting there and then with you there, everybody is a professional writer, right? English professor, head of the English department of a top private school in New York. You're a book ghostwriter, co-writer, all that. And then Liz in Chicago, when we had her there during COVID, also a professional writer, and then like this lowly chef. So I had a lot of growing to do to feel like I belonged, both as an equal member, as a critic, as a commenter on everybody else's pieces, but that the quality of the work I had to strive to swim in the waters with all of you. And so that was challenging at times for me personally, but ultimately great for the quality of the writing, and I grew a tremendous amount from it. And then also thinking about everybody in the group was writing or is writing memoir material. And so thinking about their memoir and how to, like, getting into their story, getting into your story and wanting it to be successful, me wanting to cheer you on, then I could internalize that as well and go, here's my story. How can I continue to hone and have greater clarity of the story that I'm trying to tell, in the same way that I just told Joelle what she needs to go for. So it was a great process.
Well, if you were sweating, we never saw you sweat.
No, by the time that you and I were in it together, I had crossed over. But in the early part where it was just Pam and Liz, I would come home sometimes and Susan would say to me, how was it? And I go, it was hard.
They were tenderizing you.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Well, it's a joy to be with you in writing group and to be with you in this moment when your book comes out.
Yeah.
You are the first of our writing group to have a book come out, and we're so proud of you.
Yeah, thank you, Joelle. Looking forward to being with you tonight.
Yes,
at Marlowe.
Yes, I'll be there tonight.
Great.
And those of you who are on the call in New York, there's an event tonight at Marlowe and Sons in Brooklyn and Williamsburg from 6 to 9. We'll both be there.
Yep.
And you can buy a copy of What's Good by Peter Hoffman in any independent bookstore or on bookshop.org. Support your independent bookstores. Buy a copy, support this wonderful author. And now you're going to have to answer the question, when's the next one coming out?
Yeah. Well, I think what's interesting is that, people said to me, I mean, somebody asked me in an interview early on, it's just like, what's the one thing that you learned in this whole process of writing the book? And part of the answer to that is what I've learned is that I'm now a writer, and I can continue with that. And I'm not, it's sort of like I really have made the break with being a restaurateur. I'm probably not going back into the restaurant business, and but I have a lot of things to share and a lot of wisdom to spread around. And so there were ingredients. There were ingredients that didn't make it in the book, and so those chapters are calling to be written. They're stories that I want to tell. And then there were actually a little bit of, I don't know what the book will be, but there were personal stories that didn't make the cut also, that may or may not make it in. Maybe it's not really a memoir in the way that this is sort of a comprehensive memoir. But there were definitely stories that got left out. And but I want to keep thinking about the ingredients that we cook with and the people who grow that or catch that, and make that clearer, to tell those stories to people.
Yeah, wonderful.
Yeah.
Sounds great.
Yeah, thanks.
The author is born.
Yeah, exactly.
So again, I'm Joelle. I'm a Brooklyn Book Doctor. I help people develop books. You can find me at brooklynbookdoctor.com or right here on Instagram. And I'm talking to Peter Hoffman, a chef and restaurant owner, now retired from the business and a first-time author with his beautiful book, What's Good? A Memoir in 14 Ingredients.
Mm-hmm. Great.
Thanks, Peter.
Thank you, Joelle. It's great to spend this time talking with you, and look forward to seeing you later tonight.
Likewise. I'll see you soon.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.